So this is yaleD. I'm not gonna. It's a delay in reverse, but it's not a reverse delay. Um, I'm sure you saw Rob Flax's post on patch storage in response to a question that came in on Facebook from Caleb Hargrove about the idea of creating a reverse therme where the gritty analog character was in the first repeat and it got cleaner as it went on. I started thinking about that and I came up with an idea that was slightly different from that, where I said, what if there was a delay where the repeats started quietly and got louder as you played? So that's the idea behind this delay. And the way that it does that is by sending a bunch of delays in sort of a bucket brigade through this network, and each of them has their own VCA that connects to the output, and that VCA is attenuated in different ways. There are also a couple of different slopes you can use. So this is the more exponential slope. There's an exponential slope. And there's a linear slope. And the difference between those is, I think, pretty subtle. But the more exponential slope will start out quieter and rise more dramatically toward the end. The linear slope will have sort of a steady progression of rising amplitude as it goes on. And you can set how many repeats it has. So right now we're using the most. The most repeats is 8. But you can set it down to 2. Right now I have the dry killed. You can do that with the stomp switch. There's also just a dry level control. So here it is. That's just 2 repeats. So it goes from 2 to 8. I'll leave it at 8 because that's the most. There's also a feedback loop. And this is kind of interesting because it creates almost a sort of, I don't know, kind of Doppler sound. Because the feedback loop works like a normal feedback loop works, where the repeats get quieter, but it sends them all back through the same output repeat. So they rise and then drop and rise and drop and rise and drop. It's a really nice washy sound, I think. At the bottom there's a clock divider, the clock divider that's used for the patch. We can see as I tap in a tap tempo that it will change. It also uses a MIDI clock. MIDI clock will override the tap tempo, but I wanted to put this on the front page because I think there are a lot of cool things you can do by either pushing up the delay time into ring mod territory. Or chorus territory. Let's bring the turn up the input gain. There's an input gain rather than a wet level, because that's just how I did it. I was getting some clipping in some conditions, and let's bring this down just a little bit. So you can get these sort of washy chorus bed sounds. And we can bring down the tone. The tone is a low pass filter that's in the feedback loop to make them a little bit less trilly. But you can also use this as, I think, a really kind of neat long delay loop frippertronics sort of thing, because the loops will sort of, or the delay buffers will sort of build on top of one another. So I think it's a really interesting way to build sort of longer loops or pads or you know, soundscapes, because of the way that the echoes build rather than diminish. Like I said, there's a tone control, which is just a low pass filter. There's an aliaser for adding a little bit of grit and lo-fi quality. There's a modulation. There's a little pixel that shows you how quickly the modulator is moving, and a mod depth. And then finally there's a stereo spread control. So the signal path is stereo for the dry, but it sums the stereo input to mono for the delay signal path, and then it outputs through a stereo spread. Which I think can still give you a pretty good picture of stereo-ness. So that is delay in reverse, or yaleD, or whatever you want to call it. I think it's an interesting patch. I think it has a really nice sort of textural quality to it. And you can do, you know, some neat things, particularly when you kill the dry. It has, let me turn this back. A lot of interesting qualities. So that's this patch and my sort of riff on the question that was posed to the Facebook group. So check it out. Hope you enjoy.